infusion of positive energy into the lives of single Latter-day Saints everywhere. This is Joy in the Journey Radio.
And welcome back, peeps, to the wonderful, splendiferous, joyful episode of Join the Journey Radio. I'm Lance, your host for Join the Journey Radio. Today, we're going to be going into episode number 329. Yeah, I know, it's hard to believe, right? So many. Yeah. So, episode number 329. Today, we're going to talk about something that a lot of Latter-day Saint singles have interest in, the realm of dating, but we're going to do it from a slightly different perspective. And I want to bring in to provide context and some scope for our discussion today. Oh, by the way, you might notice that, like, the new environment, I'm testing out something new, right? So I've got this little office space that I'm using perhaps temporarily. I don't know, we'll see. I've been looking into some of the tech problems with, like, video that's been, lagging, kind of just jittery, and it's producing unwatchable content, and I don't want my content to be unwatchable. So I'm trying something new out, and to provide context for the discussion today, we're going to test out some of the tech stuff that I've been looking into. Hopefully, got my fingers crossed, we'll get some of these problems fixed. But we're going to watch a short little video to provide some context for our discussion today. And let's just, let's, don't think that's the one I wanted. This is the one I wanted. Yes, this is the one I wanted. So let's test this out and see how it goes.
Times we are like the young merchant from Boston, who in 18...
Yeah, so anyway, just to kind of cue this up, those who don't know, this is the recently passed away President Ballard, and this is from a conference address he gave back in 2011. So some might call this a little dated, but yeah. I think what he's saying here, now, he's of course bringing in a story to talk about something completely different. Okay, he's not going to talk about dating, but I think that what he had to say here actually has direct relevance to dating. So check this out, and we'll have a little discussion.
1949, as the story goes, was caught up in the fervor of the California gold rush. He sold all of his possessions to seek his fortune in the California rivers, which he was told were filled with gold nuggets so big that one could hardly carry them. Day after endless day, the young man dipped his pan into the river and came up empty. His only reward was a growing pile of rocks. Discouraged and broke, he was ready to quit, until one day an old, experienced prospector said to him, "That's quite a pile of rocks you're getting there, my boy." The young man replied, "There's no gold here. I'm going back home." Walking over to the pile of rocks, the old prospector said, "Oh, there's gold, all right. You just have to know where to find it." He picked 2 rocks up in his hands, crashed them together. One of the rocks split open, revealing several flecks of gold sparkling in the sunlight. Noticing a bulging leather pouch fastened to the prospector's waist, the young man said, "I'm looking for nuggets, like the ones in your pouch, not just tiny flecks." The old prospector extended his pouch towards the young man, who looked inside, expecting to see several large nuggets. He was stunned to see that the pouch was filled with thousands of flecks of gold. The old prospector said, "Son, it seems to me you are so busy looking for large nuggets that you're missing filling your pouch with these precious flecks of gold. The patient..."
Seems like we don't have all the tech problems. Although, Speaking of tech problems, I mean, this seemed to come out much better than some of the previous video segments that we shared. So, yeah, that I don't know, but anyway, it cut off there at the end. He said, "This, the patient accumulation of these flecks of gold has brought me great wealth." And so, because I told you what we were going to talk about, right? It's like you should have been thinking in your head, like you know what direction I'm going to take now, right? And the message I have, some of you are just not going to want to hear. We're just going to just say that outright, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that because, see, my intention in providing this program is not to please you and give you fuzzy wuzzies inside and make you feel so good inside all the time, because the truth of the matter is joy in the journey comes from embracing truth. So I got to get real with you peeps. I think a lot of us are really busy looking for gold nuggets when we're considering dating candidates, and we're not considering the accumulation of flecks of gold. And, just like the old man in the story said, well, there's gold all right, you just have to know where to find it. I think too often we look at potential candidates and we think there's nothing here. We think that there's nothing here that would interest me. But we don't really know that. We're actually rushing to judgment when we make that conclusion, because we don't know what it is we're really looking at. We haven't taken the time to find out. And this gets back to, what I was saying before. It's like you really need to have 3 dates with someone. And by 3 dates, I mean 3 different activities in 3 different environments to really assess, this person that you have in front of you. I don't think you can really make a sufficient judgment on anyone, without passing that threshold of 3. And so in our rush to judgment, we think that, there's no gold nugget here, so obviously there's nothing for me. But just as the story goes, and the old man says that the accumulation of these flecks of gold has brought me great wealth. Sometimes what we think we need is not what we really need. And sometimes we can get surprised. I remember many years ago being invited by a family in the ward that I was in at the time over to Sunday dinner. And there was another family that had been invited. And so I'm kind of chit-chatting with the dad of this other family while we're waiting for final preparations of dinner to get completed. And he was talking to me about his wife. And most of what he said, I don't remember. But one thing he did say that I do remember, it stuck with me all these years. He said, I never thought I'd be happy with a redhead. And he went on to describe how, his conception of what would be acceptable to him was certainly not a woman who had red hair. And yet, the way he talked about his wife made it very clear and evident that he was very happy that he opened his mind up to a new possibility, to be open to think, well, I'll give this a go, even though he didn't think that it was what he really wanted. It turned out to be exactly what he really wanted. Just like the story, the young man who thinks that, the only thing that's going to make him happy are these huge nuggets of gold. And yet, he was getting a lesson from the old man that, the old man was wealthy because he had ignored the nuggets and looked for the tiny little flecks of gold. And I think, in reality, there are tiny flecks of gold in all of us. Now, in saying that, I'm not trying to introduce the concept that we're all interchangeable parts, because I don't think that's the case. I think there's some people that just don't fit very well together. So we do have to make some assessments, but there comes a point where I think we take some qualities that are desirable, some preferences, and we make them deal breakers. And these preferences really should just stay preferences. They shouldn't be deal breakers. I go back to, the story I was just telling you about this guy who married a redhead. It's like, would he have found the same happiness if he had, stuck to his vision of what he thinks that his wife should be? Yeah, I'm not so sure about that. I think he had the blessings that he had because he was willing to be open-minded and to tolerate some deviation from his preferences. Now, understand that, again, some people are not going to like to hear this message, right? It makes them feel uneasy inside because, they don't want to be stuck with second best, something that's less than, because they're under the mistaken belief, the assumption behind their thinking is that if you don't have top shelf, you'll never be happy. And that assumption comes from the natural mindset. It exists in both men and women, although personally, I've observed it more in women than men, much more in women than in men, actually. Although I have seen it in men. I've seen it way, way more in women. And I think a lot of that has to do with just the way that women are naturally hardwired to think. They use emotional logic to reach their conclusions. So where a man will look at a situation and assess it based on intellectual logic, does it make sense that I would accept what's in front of me? That's the gist of the thought process going on inside the man. For the woman, the gist of the process is based on emotional logic. And so the equivalent of making sense is feeling good. And so does it make me feel good? And so, when it feels good, yes, accept it. If it doesn't feel good, then reject it. And once you start understanding, these different lenses that the sexes use, a lot of things start making sense. A lot of things start making real sense. So I understand, a lot of women are just not going to like that because the message that I'm sharing today is not going to make a lot of them feel good. What? You mean I have to take something less than? No! I'll never be happy, ever. You're consigning me to an eternity of misery and woe. Actually, no, I'm not. See, when we get out of the mindset that we have to have a gold nugget in order to be wealthy, that wealth can actually come through the accumulation of little flecks of gold, then we start realizing that, yeah, there really are possibilities to be happy with someone who is less than. Now, in no way am I trying to justify that people shouldn't step up their game, that they shouldn't work on themselves, become better versions of themselves, and fulfill their potentials, become more attractive companions. I'm not advocating that message at all. In fact, I actually am advocating we should be improving upon ourselves. But at the same time, it just can't be one way, right? So, it can't just be someone with a lower standard reaching their game up. The standard that is up here high, that could come down a little bit, especially if the standard is high because some preferences that should stay preferences are actually deal breakers. It's one thing to say, yeah, you know what? You should step up your game and, reach the next level of performance. Okay, that's one thing. But it's a whole other, ball game to say, well, we're not going to question the standards that we're trying to reach. That the standards are unquestionable. That we're not going to evaluate them at all. See, there's a two-way street here, and I think we have to, if we're going to be fair, we have to look at both sides of that equation. So, yeah, I think what we need to start doing is valuing the small little flakes of gold and accumulating those. I'm reminded of, the episode we had a couple of weeks ago with Book Club, where we were talking about Carol Dweck's book, Mindset. And, one of the favorite quotes there's a lot of favorite quotes in the book that I didn't get to share, but one of the ones that I did get to share was, it's not about living happily ever after, but working happily ever after. Too many of us, I think, are looking for perfection right at the onset. And really, everyone's a work in progress. I mean, who isn't a work in progress? We're all imperfect. If any of us were perfect, we wouldn't be here, because we wouldn't need this mortal experience. Part of the purpose of this mortal experience is to help to perfect us. It's part of our journey of eternal progression. And so anyone who's here is going to be a work in progress. Anyone who's going to be imperfect. And if we don't tolerate imperfection, then, we're basically shooting ourselves in the foot, and we're keeping ourselves single. Now, again, don't take what I'm saying to an extreme. I'm not in any way suggesting that we shouldn't have, filters, that we're not all interchangeable parts. Some people are just not going to fit well together. So there is a place for making decisions. And, oh, gosh, they took the lights out again. Yeah. So much for my solution to my tech problems, right? So anywho, we're gonna wrap this up here. I'm not suggesting that we and just take anybody. That's not what I'm suggesting at all. But I'm suggesting that we open our minds up, and we actually tolerate more imperfection. Not all imperfection, but more imperfection. And I think when we do that, while keeping some standards that should be deal breakers, like, for example, if you're considering dating somebody, there should be a record of, hey, you've got a record where you've actually shown through your actions that you're wanting to make and keep sacred covenants. And you're willing to do that because you have a track record of keeping covenants that you've already made, right? So I think that needs to be a deal breaker, right? If you don't have that, then cut that out. But this is kind of a cool fact. I'm kind of digging this now. We'll go on a little longer with it. But yeah, some things should be deal breakers, but there's a lot of things that I think, that people put in their lists of must-haves that I don't think are must-haves at all. And really, when you drill down into it, you find that it's about feeling something that you want to feel. And you don't need to make all of these laundry lists of, things that really aren't that consequential in eternity, deal breakers. You can find the feeling that you want through other means. But of course, not everyone's going to buy that. So, but I'm telling you, it is true. So I think we just need to be, we need to be more serious about what it is we're engaged in. The creation of families. Because your marriage isn't about you. It's about the family you're creating. It's about bringing children into the world, raising them, giving them a moral experience, and preparing them for mortality, the moral experience that they're going to have as adults, and giving them an experience that will help them on in the eternities to come. And so, what we're engaged in is a lot bigger than just, what we think we need to be happy. It's something much larger than that. So, I just want to, leave you this week with, this message, to give you this thing to think about. If I had co-hosts and guests on the program that we could actually I think we could have a vibrant discussion about this topic that would be fascinating and also educational for a lot of single Latter-day Saints. But everyone I've asked has said no. So if you're willing to come on the program, then by all means, hit me up. Go to jointhejrradio.com/contact, fill out the contact form, and let's see what we can do. So again, that's all I got for this week, peeps. So until next time, I'm wishing the best. I hope that, I'll give you something that would help you. And really, I do hope that a lot of us really consider this message and take it to heart. Because I think a lot of us have some deal breakers that should not be deal breakers at all. And really, we need to be prizing the flecks of gold over the gold nuggets. That if you can find a gold nugget, hey, more power to you. I'm not saying that's not a good thing. But what I am saying is that we shouldn't insist on having a gold nugget. That it's not, the dichotomy that so many of us set up is we want a gold nugget or nothing. I have to have top shelf or nothing at all. And I think that's a trap. That's a trap that keeps us unnecessarily single. When we could be having more joy in our journey with a companion that we work together with, that, there's I can't remember who said this, but it's the idea of, thee lift me and I'll lift thee and together we'll ascend. I think that's what we're all really looking for. And so we need to align our approach to dating to be more accepting of that concept, as opposed to, well, you've got to meet this laundry list and every item's a deal breaker. And if you don't meet that list, then I'm sorry, this is nothing here. I think we need to be more flexible and more tolerant of imperfection. Not all imperfection, because some imperfections you should not tolerate. If the guy's a stalker, or some kind of criminal, then yeah, that should be a deal breaker. I'm not saying you shouldn't have some kind of, there are standards that are legitimate, but I think a lot of the standards that we use, that we say are legitimate, really aren't. If we take a step back and look at things through the eternal lens, I think, yeah, we'll see that some of the standards we've been using really aren't legitimate when we take the covenant mindset as opposed to the natural mindset. So anywho, that's all I got for this week, peeps. And, if you want to leave comments, then leave them down below. And otherwise, I'll see you guys next week for another wonderful, splendiferous, joyous episode of Joy in the Journey Radio. So until then, this is your host reminding you there is joy to be had all along your journey. Take that joy. Journey on.